So when somebody does something evil in the name of the good, that to me is the worst.
I'm Tal Zafani. At 40, I was introduced to a philosophy that transformed my life. My passion is applying philosophical principles towards a better, I might add, heroic life. Join me as I sit down with people that I find inspiring, guided by their authentic values that define who and how they pursue their happiness. These high-achieving individuals aren't just living a good enough life, they're flourishing. This is the happiest man alive. Yaron Brook is a leading objectivist intellectual. Yaron spent 17 years running the Ayn Rand Institute. He's a former finance professor, an author, and a leading public voice for objectivism, Ayn Rand's philosophy that promotes reason, individualism, and capitalism. He's one of the few public intellectuals who has a consistent, non-contradictory, and uncompromising set of ideas. He treats philosophy as something you actually use, not something you study and put back on the shelf. He loves what he does and applies himself every day. The Yaron Brook Show is where he takes whatever the news cycle is throwing at him, a court ruling, an election, a war, and traces it back to the philosophical questions underneath. Today, I'm very excited to interview someone who had a major impact on my life, and I owe him a lot. So today, we're having a conversation that I'm looking forward to. His name is Yaron Brook. Welcome, Yaron.
Thanks. This will be fun.
So the way I like to kick things off is I call it the hypothesis, and it's everything I know about you put into the Yaron Brook hypothesis. You ready for it? In your case, it's quite long. I don't know why it took me.
It's a little scary.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So sit back, relax, and tell me if the hypothesis is right. Okay, here it goes. Yaron is a man of big ideas. He's not just a man of ideas. He's a warrior in the battle of ideas. And he will admit he likes the fight. And as a good warrior, he's disciplined. He learns from the best. He trains every day. He works hard at his craft. And when it is time to go to the ring, or in his case, the stage, he is as ready as one can be. He's ready because he trusts himself, his ideas, his knowledge, and his sharp mind to serve him in real time. Yaron can break down a current event to its philosophical essentials better than anyone walking this planet. And he knows it. He knows that his ideas are the best in the market, but he doesn't let the gap between the quality of his ideas and their level of acceptance deter him, because Yaron fights. When I say Yaron is a man of big ideas, I also mean he doesn't like small ideas. Give him some repetitive technicalities and he gets bored very quickly. Delegation and division of labor are blessings for him. Yaron can be perceived as being hard or rough on the outside because he exudes so much confidence that sometimes is mistaken for arrogance. But he's really a kind of a coconut, because beneath that, what seems like a hard shell lies a soft, tender side. Yaron loves deeply. He's high on life. He's an admirer of beauty and fine art. He loves the delicacies of life, the great food, the wine, the luxurious sports car, and he surrounds himself with inspiration. You'd be surprised, but Yaron doesn't like conflicts, not when it comes to people. Hit him with the wrong idea and he'll charge forward, ready to tear it apart. But when it comes to people, he'll do a lot to avoid a confrontation because he cares. Lastly, Yaron is a happy man, one of the happiest people you'll ever meet. He loves living in his own skin, and he's full of high-octane fuel of an uncompromised sense of purpose and pure love for what he does.
I think I'm blushing.
That's you blushing.
That's me blushing.
So how's the hypothesis? Are you really that kind of a person?
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah?
That's good. Yeah.
So are you a happy person, a really happy person?
I think so, yeah. I mean, happiness is something that you kind of accumulate over life. It's a state of mind. It's a state of consciousness. And yeah, does that mean that every moment is ecstasy? No, I don't think that's what happiness means. Mm-hmm. But it means that fundamentally, you know that life is good and you belong in this life and you're having fun. You're actually enjoying it. You're pursuing your values. You're achieving them. I think that is what happiness is.
Mm-hmm. What is your unique competence? Like your the thing you think you do better than most, or most of the most?
I think intellectually, it's probably my ability to integrate information. I mean, it's why I can hold. I find I hold a huge amount of information in my mind, and I think it's really well integrated. It's connected. Everything is connected to everything else, and that's why really quickly. I can go deep. I can find what the cause of something is or how it's related to something else. So I think it's the ability to integrate. I don't remember a lot of stuff, or at least I don't.
I see you
technically,
remember,
I don't remember stuff.
History.
Yeah, it's all
Israeli
there.
wars. You remember the sequence. You remember.
And it might be that if you ask me a particular thing, I won't remember it. But in the context of something else, that's when it comes forward,
up.
because it's integrated. It's a connected whole. So I think the ability to integrate information, and integrate knowledge, and integrate it not just in terms of the history, but also philosophically around particular ideas is, I think, the strength. That
You feel like you're doing what Ayn Rand said, where she thinks about things a lot, just to kind of put it in her subconscious, and then your subconscious mind rewards you in real time. That's what you're relying on when you walk on the stage or open the Yaron Brook show.
Yeah, I mean, Ayn Rand had this unbelievable capacity for introspection, which I probably do not have. So I don't know what I do, right? I mean, that's the reality. It's why I can't really. It's hard to teach. It's hard to. So I don't know why it happens. But yes, probably. It's probably a process of your thinking. You're seeing connections. You're making them, and then you're supplying your subconscious with all that content, and you habituate it. You make it a habit. So you're not even necessarily conscious that you're doing it. You're not making an effort to do it. You're just doing it because it's just the way you think.
You seem to be fully integrated with your ideas, and you know everything. I remember I was flying with you for like 3-4 hours, and we were talking the whole way about immigration, and it seems like your mind is set on everything. Have you learned something new in the last, let's say, I don't know, year, where you say it was a really new integration of something in my worldview, or you basically have kind of ironed everything out?
No, I think I learn something new all the time. I couldn't state what it is necessarily, but every time I listen to our colleague Anka Gate, I think I learned something new. So there's constant learning. You constantly have to be on top of it. You constantly have to integrate information. Plus, a lot of time, our philosopher friends will put things explicitly that I might know, or I might get a sense, yeah, that's right, but they frame it in a way that I could never frame it. And that again, as you add that kind of content, you're helping, you're adding to that ongoing integration that is happening.
Well, I know I once joked with you that I can tell you what the talk is about on your way up to the stage, and you'll do like a standing ovation. What's going on? Is it like scripts in your mind when you go on stage and you talk about, I don't know, morality, capitalism, or whatever it is that allows you to just roll?
So it depends on the talk, right? Yeah. So morality of capitalism is already, there's no script there, but there's an outline. Mm-hmm. And once I have an outline, then I trust myself to fill in the gaps.
So you remember like 3 things, 4 things, and
4 things. And look, morality of capitalism I've done so many times that I can play around with it. Sometimes in the middle of a talk I say, God, I forgot that I was supposed to say something else 10 minutes ago. Yeah. But something new. I know a lot about these topics. If it's a topic I know a lot about, I can come up with an outline fairly quickly. It won't be as good as something I've done many times or practiced or really thought about, but it's relatively easy to do that. The knowledge is there. It's just a matter of figuring out what the right structure is, and what are the important points you want to convey to the audience, and leave out the rest. And I just trust myself to do that. So I create an outline very quickly, and then trust myself that it'll just flow from there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I joked with somebody sometime that I could probably do a pretty good talk about pretty much anything for a 20-minute talk, pretty much anything. I'm not sure it would be true.
Yeah.
But
but it'll sound good.
But it would sound good, because one of the things you learn as a public speaker is, on pretty much any given topic, you know much more than the audience does. And that should give you the confidence to be able to, you can go up there and say things that the audience doesn't know if you didn't quite get the formulation right, or if the exact, the exact concrete you're giving is exactly fitting. I mean, and it should make you want to be better constantly. When you screw up. But the audience really knows when you screw up.
you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
If you want to find more meaning in your life, clarify your deepest authentic values, I invite you to a free workshop with me. It's going to happen July 1st. If you're at Ocon in New Orleans, you're welcome to join in person or join through Zoom. Just go to talsafani.com and register for free.
Still on a kind of personal level, who do you admire other than Ayn Rand? Really admire, like someone you look up to?
Yeah, I mean, it varies. I mean, Steve Jobs was a real hero to me. I really admire him. Every time I see a video of him and doing an interview, I'm blown away by the way he thinks.
Yeah.
And the integrations he makes and the scope of his thinking and how observant he is. And you can see kind of Steve Jobs when he's young and he's talking about things, you can see how that becomes a reality
later on
when he comes back to Apple and he's doing. But I just saw recently a thing where he talks about Pixar, and he's so thoughtful and he's so insightful, and he did it. That's the other thing. You can talk about stuff, but then he actually had the skill and the capacity to actually go in and change the world and change companies and change the world. So I admire great businessmen, and certainly I think Steve Jobs is up there probably in the.
Is there a thinker that you admire?
I mean, I admire Leonard Peikoff and everything that Leonard produced. He was a mentor, a teacher to me, and I mean, where would I be without OPA and without all his courses and everything I've learned from him? And just having the opportunity to interact with him at an intellectual level has contributed enormously to me. And of course, we've mentioned people like Anka and other people kind of within our universe. So in terms of so those would be the thinkers I admire most. I mean, when I look at history, there's an endless number of people to admire. I mean, it really is quite amazing in the context of their time, how many people managed to really do great things.
What do you think, we'll mention Leonard, what made Leonard such an amazing teacher?
I mean, he's really...
Because I think you're an amazing teacher. I see you teach.
Yeah.
What makes him a great teacher?
Well, first, he's really smart. He's off the chart smart. He gets the philosophy, and he takes it seriously. So whereas a lot of people take the philosophy seriously and they study it, and Leonard really studied it. He lived it, and he would bug Ayn Rand, right? He hung around Ayn Rand, and he would bug her, and to the point of maybe even being obnoxious sometimes. But more questions and more questions and more questions. He wouldn't settle. He had to understand. He had to know.
All the way to the core.
All the way to the core, and then integrate it. And he's a great integrator. I mean, he has this capacity, again, to integrate massive quantities of information. He can get to the heart of a problem. In a Q&A, you can see it. Somebody will ask a question. He will get to the heart of what it is. But I really think it's that he really understands it to the core. And then he figured out how to be an effective communicator. He really thought about it, and he really set himself the task of teaching objectivism. And he only, I think, started doing that, or what we know of what he started doing it, is after he'd already integrated the philosophy so well that it just came out. He's also, very values-oriented and very ambitious, right? So when he does a course on something, he wants to really do it well. He doesn't settle. And so I think he's in a sense, a kind of a perfectionist. He really wants it. It's why all his lectures are written out and every word is in its place. I am not. So
his precision
is amazing, and but he also understands that he has to repeat. He has to do it at the level and at the pace that the audience can understand. And he's very, very alert to what is possible for the audience to do.
What did you think about his radio shows where he tried to kind of apply it into like real life living, almost like psychology of people? And what did you make of that?
I thought they were fantastic. They were quite a lot of work. I mean, he worked really hard on those radio shows and the integration. That's why when he tried to do a daily show, it couldn't work because there was just too much work involved, too much to do. But I thought they were brilliant. I mean, the connections he made, the integrations he made between the philosophy, current events, and people's psychology, that whole realm. I mean, yeah, he was uniquely able to do that. Of all the people I know, he is the only person I know who could do all that.
I used to play a game with myself for about a year because he has so many seasons of Q&As. And so I would hear the question, I would pause.
Yep.
I would think like, how is Leonard going to attack this one? And I would try, and I would get so many wrong.
Yeah. No, he has an original mind, and when you see somebody at their peak doing that, and it's a beautiful thing to watch.
How lucky are we to have Leonard Peikoff after Ayn Rand?
I mean, hugely. I mean, I don't know what happens to Ayn Rand without Leonard Peikoff, in the sense that her books would still be around, the philosophy would still be there, her novels would certainly sell. But would there be a philosophical movement? Would there be people studying her ideas this soon after she died? I mean, maybe over time, I think yes, but
at that level, because of
that level, because Leonard got it directly from her. He had it integrated. He understood it. He could write an opera. How many people could write an opera? And again, maybe at some point somebody will be able to, but it's a huge shortcut. And I think the fact that there's an objectivist movement, the fact that we have confidence in these ideas continuing into the future as a philosophy, not just as novels, as a philosophy, as an integrated philosophy, as a philosophy that can be applied to our lives and to the political world and to the reality around us. That is all due, I think, to Leonard and what he did in his courses and in OPA and his teaching and his, and the fact that he taught people like me and Ankar and others.
Let's go from the good side to the dark side. Who do you really despise? I mean, people you hate their guts. I mean, even today or the past or history. I mean, who's really evil?
I mean, there were a lot of people, sadly. There were a lot of people.
But that you personally hate.
That I personally hate.
Despise. Let's say despise.
I mean, here's the thing. I often find myself hating people who, I think have shown potential to be good and shown potential that other people tend to like. And that I just see all the badness. We're both from Israel, so
yeah.
And say, I hate Bibi Netanyahu, right?
You just lost more subscribers.
I know. I do this to myself all the time. And it's not that he's the most horrible prime minister you could ever imagine.
But
there are many people who are worse than him. But he has such ability, he has such capability, there was so much promise there.
And he was exposed to the ideas, right?
He read Atlas Shrugged. He definitely read Atlas Shrugged. But also, when he was finance minister, he was pretty good. And then he becomes prime minister, and he's not. And it's just that you see that ability, that spark, and it's just waste. And combined with that he seduced. One of the things that really upsets me, I guess, interesting, is that people who I think are not good, who seduce good people, who good people think are good. So like Netanyahu. Netanyahu's a good example. Trump is a good example. Okay. Right?
Oh, so he seduces.
Yeah, a lot of people think Netanyahu's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, they think he's tough. They think he's strong. They think, and I'm like, no, the guy's a weakling. And that upsets me more. If you're a weakling, then you're a weakling. Everybody knows you're a weakling. That's fine. At least it's out in the open. But people who undermine and, in a sense, present an image that is not real, I don't like that. Donald Trump, obviously, I think everybody knows I'm deranged about Donald Trump.
What about the left? People say that you don't hit the left enough.
I mean, when they're in power, I hate them. I mean,
who was like Obama?
I hated Obama.
Yeah, okay.
I hated Obama.
I heard you talk about Obama.
Yeah, I mean, I hated Obama, again, partially because
of the same reason?
He was so smooth.
Yeah.
And people were so, I used to listen to speeches by Obama, and people would rave about them, and I was like, what are you talking about?
Listen to what he said.
He literally said nothing. No, it wasn't even that he said something. I'm talking about leftists who raved about him. It's like, leftists, did you hear what he said? He said nothing. What was it, hope and something? I mean, it was bromides, it was empty, and it meant nothing. And of course, he was destructive. But I hate people who are viewed as on the positive side more than I hate the people who are clearly negative. Because everybody, that's obvious. Yeah, Obama's bad, Biden is bad, all these guys are bad. AOC, she's bad. Yeah, I know that. There's nothing new there. I find it much more upsetting when somebody is presented as good. He's a defender of capitalism. And then in the defense of capitalism, I don't know, he bails out all the banks, Bush, who I hated, or he takes equity stakes in companies, or he puts tariffs on all of us. So when somebody does something evil in the name of the good, that to me is the worst, right? Evil people do evil stuff. We all know that. Everybody knows that. Socialists are socialists. It's when people claim to be capitalist and they destroy capitalism, nothing upsets me. It's like, within our world, people who claim to be objectivist and undermine objectivism. That is much more upsetting than somebody who just doesn't get it and who's not an objectivist, right? So I hate people who kind of pseudo-objectivist. Well, it's not even hypocrisy. Because, But to undermine the very ideas that they claim to support, that to me is much worse. And so when people associate the right politically with individual rights and capitalism and freedom and all of that, and then they do the exact opposite, there's nothing that I get more upset about.
We were in an event together, Atlas Circle, and we read Hazony and Deneen, and then we got to J.D. Vance, and I saw you get animated. What is it about J.D. Vance that troubles you?
Again, it's how close he is to power. Mm-hmm. So Hazony and Hazony is a kind of intellectual, national conservative intellectual. Harari is a leftist intellectual who is really bad. I mean, he's one of the people I really despise, partially because people admire him so much and he's so bad. But J.D. Vance is so close to power and he's so bad. He's smart. It's clear he's smart. But he's very, very corrupt. He is a power luster.
He states that he's going to use power to promote his religion.
There's no question. I mean, he is influenced by the worst intellectuals out there. He's influenced by right-wing intellectuals who want to use Christianity, want to use their Christian moral code in order to shape policy, in order to and explicitly bring it into politics. He believes
Do you
that.
see him lurking in the background to take us even more kind of downhill?
He's definitely the front runner among Republican in the primaries. Now, whether he wins or not, I don't know, because he's not a likable guy. I mean, that's the one thing going for those who don't like him, is he's not likable, and a lot of people won't support him. But he does have a base. He has a base of support. He's smart, he's intellectual, and he's manipulated himself. He's gotten himself into a position of power. He hasn't been in the Senate very long. He's a young guy, but he's made the right friends. Trump's sons are big admirers of him. His Tucker Carlson is a big fan of his. So he's in a position where he could take power. And, I can't imagine him getting elected, but I could never imagine Trump getting elected. So I'm not very good at imagining people getting elected. So it's possible that he becomes president one day. And I think whereas I don't think Trump is an ambitious, people call him a fascist or whatever. I don't think he's a fascist. I don't think he's ambitious in that way. I don't think I don't think he believes in anything. So I don't think he has a conception of what the state could be. He wants everybody to do what he says. He wants to be admired.
He pushes, like now with ICE, he kind of backs.
Yeah, he pushes, and if he gets backlash, and he doesn't know what to do with the backlash exactly because he's getting different. But he's the market. A businessman calling him up, that he understands, and he backs off a little bit. He's not, because he doesn't have a vision. Trump doesn't have a vision. He doesn't say, I want America to be, this way.
Great again.
Well, great again is just a meaningless slogan. Whereas J.D. Vance has a vision. He is much more potentially a fascist in the sense that he has an idea of what he would like America to be. Yeah. And it's not the America I want to live in. It's not America that I think is, it doesn't live up to what America should be. It's a really bad vision. Now, the same thing is true of some people on the left. I think Obama had a particular vision of the United States. I think he wanted to make it like Europe. I mean, his basic premise was there's nothing special about America, and Europeans have it better, and we should be more like Europe. And I think that was his vision. And I think J.D. Vance's vision is even more evil, from the other side, because I think he's much more authoritarian even than Obama would have been.
So Leonard had the dim hypothesis as far as how he sees things moving forward. Do you have your own dim hypothesis? I know you don't like to kind of forecast the future, but what do you think is happening? Like, how do you analyze the kind of the tectonic plates that are now in play in our age? And
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a big admirer of Leonard's ominous parallels and the dim hypothesis. I think they're both really fascinating analysis of history and using that history to project into the future. And I think they both come to the same conclusion, and I think they're both right. And I think the conclusion at the end of the day is that America is not a country that's going to be seduced by the kind of woke left that the far left represents. America is not the kind of place that is going to embrace egalitarianism. That is complete equality. People will rebel against that. There's a certain number of Americans who want egalitarianism, who want complete equality. But that is a small number, and most people realize that outcomes should not all be the same. So I don't think an egalitarian-driven movement is what is going to dominate America's future, though it'll do a lot of harm on the way, right? So in the meantime, once in a while, the egalitarian president will get elected, bad stuff will happen, Americans will rebel against it. But I think the long-term trend in history is the rebellion against that. And we definitely see that with Trump. A big part of Trump's appeal is his rejection of egalitarianism, his explicit argument for hierarchy, for different levels, and of course that is much of the right is about is a negation of egalitarianism, not necessarily in the name of freedom, which results in people having different, but in the name of some kind of embedded hierarchy, right? Some people are better than others; they should be above others. They talk about meritocracy, but first of all, meritocracy is I think an illegitimate concept, but they talk about meritocracy, but what they really want is what they really believe in is some people are better and we just need to recognize their better ability. And they never define what they mean, what the context of merit actually is. So I think that America is not going to go far left for very long periods of time. It'll flirt with it like New York is flirting with Mamdani right now. But
big decline would be...
But the big decline, I think, is going to be, and you're seeing it around J.D. Vance and people like that, is around nationalism and it's around religion. The two big ideas in America, sadly, that people seem to get excited about are some form of nationalism, and it's fairly soft now, so we're not yet at the point where people are willing to go to barricades over this. And the integration of religion into real life. And the radicals are really pushing. But again, there's a significant proportion of Americans who are still not willing to embrace it. I think what we're seeing in Minneapolis with the left rejecting ICE and significant proportion of people on the left rejecting it, but also the lack of popularity of ICE throughout the country is a sign that the country is not quite ready to embrace nationalism and religiosity and this hatred of immigrants and the hatred of other.
Yeah.
So we're still early in the process. In spite of how bad Trump seems to be, in spite of how bad things are moving, I still think we're early in the process. We're not going to become dictatorial tomorrow. It's not heading that way, primarily because I think a majority of Americans just don't want it yet. But that could change. It could change with a crisis. It could change with the right kind of charismatic leader who can integrate things right. So you've got nationalism and you've got religion, but what can you do to attract the left? What can you integrate to attract the left? And that could be hostility to wealth, so hostility to billionaires. It could be pro-environmentalism. The right has always had a flirtation with environmentalism. It looks like environmentalism is in decline right now, so maybe that's not what it's going to be. But they have to draw something to bring together that portion of the population today which is objecting to Trump, to bring them on board. Because the dictatorship at the end of the day is supported by most of the people. Most dictatorships ultimately, if it's not actively supported, it's not rejected by a large number of people. If a large number of people truly reject it, particularly at its birth, then it doesn't survive. I mean, a good example of that is the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Ayatollah Khomeini was brilliant in integrating into all of his sermons during the 1970s elements of socialism, elements of leftist ideology. And then pulling together the left and the Islamists together. And then after he gained power, he got rid of all the leftists. He killed them all because obviously it wasn't consistent with his ideology. But he brought them in to create a coalition, to bring about a revolution, to take control. And any dictator, I think, needs to do that. And I think that there's still too much opposition in America today for it to fall for
So just walk me for a second. Like, let's say J.D. Vance wins. How in what dimension do you see the deterioration? I mean, can you imagine something that what can get worse? I mean, what he'll do that will hurt our freedoms? In what way? How do you see that happening?
Well, I mean, we could see things like a nationwide abortion ban. We could see him overriding states, particularly if he can get enough support in the Senate, and if Republicans do very well, and they'd have to do very well, I think, for J.D. Vance to win. You could see start elements of religion, creeping into various aspects of
Education.
Certainly education. And look, one of the things that's true of the new right, of the J.D. Vance type of right, is they don't want to privatize education. So there's a lot of Republicans who are for school choice, various forms of school choice, which gives some autonomy to schools. J.D. Vance doesn't want that. What he wants is more control. He just wants it to be right-wing control rather than left-wing control. So you could see books changing. You could see 10 Commandments being introduced into classrooms. You can see a much more explicit.
Being banned in Florida.
You could see. Yeah, I mean, we've had leftists ban Ayn Rand's books from school districts. We could see much more of that. But more importantly, what you're already starting to see from Trump, and could be really accelerated, is a disregard for the very foundational system that we have. And this is the biggest damage that Trump is doing. So a disregard for the courts, a disregard for Congress, just
more executive
orders. more executive power, Congress just being a rubber stamp and ignoring the courts, or manipulating the courts in a way that the courts ultimately support it. So it's partially going to depend on what happens over the next 3 years with Trump, and how, if the courts stand up to Trump or not, the extent to which somebody like J.D. Vance can get away with manipulating it. Look, if you look at how Putin did it, or if you look at how Orban in Hungary did it, they take over the media. They make sure the media is all their friends, and then suddenly you start having a monolith of media. Now, it's always been kind of a monolith of the left, but the monolith of the left was not because they were all bought, but they were all somehow connected to it just happens that all the intellectuals happen to be leftist, and that's who dominates the media. Here you would have a group of individuals who are sympathetic and friendly and to the regime, to the government, and therefore you get one-dimensional media. You could see the beginning of censorship all across. I mean, journalists being arrested. You could see social media being curtailed. What Biden tried to do, and to some extent succeeded during COVID for a short period of time, you could see now become there's a government line, and Twitter you better follow, and Facebook you better follow the government line. Or we shut you down, we penalize you, we do something to you. So a lot more restrictions on free speech. I mean, think about the fact that Trump these days is calling everybody who disagrees with him, he says they're enemies of America, or treason, or things like that. I mean, imagine if they actually start coming after you around criticizing the government and criticizing, Trump has an executive order where he basically labels people that are anti-American and anti-Christian as potential enemies, right? I mean, be anti-Christian or anti-American. Who gets to define what anti-American is? So things like that get a lot more explicit and start getting enforced. And so I view Trump's presidency in many respects as a test case. That they're testing different things, and I think the right uses Trump and probably manipulates him in the background. Some of his people like Milei and J.D. Vance and maybe others who are more ideological are using him to try different things. Let's do this. Let's see what happens. Let's see how much resistance we get. And they're testing us to see where the resistance happens. And this is why I think it's so important to speak up and really object to what's going on when bad stuff happens. Also do so many bad things at the same time that it's hard to keep track, and it's hard to object to everything. And that's part of the strategy. But I definitely think these are test balloons to see what the right can get away with in a future administration.
Any optimism, any good people out there or any movements that you think is going for the better?
I mean, there are better people out there, but there's not a lot of movements that are going for the better. There just isn't any organized movement. I mean, if you left and right, everything is really going towards anti-reason and anti-capitalism and anti-the United States. I mean, there are particular people that I think elevate certain aspects of what's good in our society. I mean, and the people who defend the Enlightenment, that's the key, right? So we are the inheritors of this cultural philosophical movement called the Enlightenment that somehow has survived the last 250 years in spite of being constantly attacked by every philosopher and every philosophical movement. And so there are people out there who still defend the Enlightenment or defend the Enlightenment values to one extent or another. And so I'm encouraged by the fact that they still exist. I think that most people in tech, maybe less so today than 5-6 years ago, but most people in tech are still on the side of the Enlightenment, on the side of reason, and on the side of progress, and on the side of wealth creation and value creation. And so that's inspiring. Businessmen are still a source of inspiration. But sadly, what's good is that there's resistance to authoritarianism of the right. And when the left gets into power and they do crazy things, there seems to be resistance to that. So the fact that we're still a country where we're resisting kind of the obvious attempts to just grab big chunks of power, that is good. But that is going to erode over time unless there's a positive movement to present positive ideas and a positive vision. You can't win by just balancing off the bad. Every round of that, some freedom gets eroded a little bit, and we're less free than we were, a little bit earlier. So we're descending. I think we're still descending. It's still slow, but we are descending. Trump is a real test of the system, and we'll see. The courts have to stand up to him, otherwise we're in real trouble. But it's likely a Democrat will win like next time. And he'll use a lot of what Trump has done to promote their agenda, and then there'll be a backlash against that. So we're still in this backlash, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It doesn't move us in a positive direction, but at least it prevents a fast descent into, complete authoritarianism.
Do you think that vacuum in the middle is an opportunity for Enlightenment movements like Objectivism, or do you think there's some kind of an attractive power to draw people in to say, this is crazy, this is even more crazy?
I mean, it is the challenges, and I think so I think it's hard though, right? And this is why you're seeing no political force in that area, because it's hard to get people excited about being in the middle, right? The problem is that the big vast majority of Americans are in the middle, which means they don't have any ideas. They don't have really any principles. They kind of generally have a sense that they're pro-freedom. They're generally mixed economy. They're not capitalist. They're not socialist. They won't admit it, but they kind of like the status quo, because every time you push on any particular aspect of the status quo, they rebel against it. These centrists, where the majority is, where I think the United States would be in better shape if they kind of won elections, because it would slow even further down the descent. But nobody can get excited about it. There's no positive. Yeah. And then when you come, like we do, with a positive agenda, well, but that's so radical. It's so hard for them. They can't accept it. So they might say, yes, enlightenment, reason, yes, capitalism. Oh my God, you can't be serious. You know, people will die in the streets. You know, somebody like Stephen Peikoff is going to be on a number of different things, going to be very aligned and very, very excited. But then when you bring in capitalism, or you bring in what freedom actually means,
Too extreme.
It's too much. And then even if you bring in what reason actually means, it's a little too much for so many of these people. So it's tough. I mean, I read a lot of good authors who are critical of the world in which we live, critical of the far left and critical of the far right. But then what do they stand for? It's ambiguous. And when you want to say, here's what you should stand for, they rebel against it because it's too
See how many people rally around criticism rather than something positive, right?
I mean, I will say the one positive thing, you mentioned positive, is I'm still, you know, positive and excited about Milei in Argentina. I do think he's really interesting. He's got a lot of flaws, but he's got a lot of virtues, and he's doing what he said he would do, and he's doing it in a responsible. You know, the expectation would be that somebody who claims to be an anarchist and a libertarian and all this would come in and break everything,
and he doesn't.
And he's not. He's doing it in what I think is a fairly rational, objective way. He's liberating the economy step by step, in a way that the citizens of Argentina are going to benefit from, and in a way that might be sustainable over the long run. So he's much more rational than his persona seems to suggest, and some of his heroes, like Rothbard or Hopper, seem to suggest. And that's why many of the kind of anarchist libertarians hate him. They don't like him because he's not breaking things. Because at the end of the day, they're really nihilists, and he's not a nihilist to his credit. So while there's certain things that I don't like about him, he's cozying up to Donald Trump primarily, and some other aspects of what he does, the primary things that he's doing in Argentina are positive. And then the question is, will people have the guts to look at him and say, oh, so this is how you get an economy going. So this is what needs to happen. So it hasn't happened yet, but you know, another 5 years, another 8 years, maybe we'll start seeing people. Another positive, I guess. One of the positives of Donald Trump putting Europe into a corner is that Europe seems to be just a little bit waking up, you know, mildly so, not nowhere near enough, but mildly so. So there is a move to deregulate in Europe. The German chancellor has just come out and said, this is ridiculous how much we regulate. We need to cut regulation dramatically. We're way behind. There's a movement to build up their own military to stand up to the Russians. And for them, it's existential, whereas so there might be a real energy behind it. There seems to be slow movement within Europe to fix some of the real bad problems. Now, again, they're not going to become capitalist, and they're nowhere near the right way to approach it, but they're going to move away from the completely self-destructive, suicidal policies that they've had over the last 30, 40 years.
We move away, because I want to go back to what you said about Enlightenment, and you and Don Watkins are writing a book about Christianity versus the West. I want to go to that, but just before, because I hear it so much and I want to hear, it's like, what do you say to people who think that Trump is a lesser of two evils? What do they get fundamentally wrong when they have that view of, why are you complaining? It's the best we have.
I think what they fundamentally get wrong is that they're looking at concretes that are in the long run not the important concretes, not what's important in terms of the long run trends. So they look at the left and they see, I don't know, trans women, trans men, trans women, whatever, in sports, right?
Yeah.
And they say this is horrific. And yeah, I get it. It's unjust. It doesn't make any sense. But it's not going to change America, right? If that happens for another 5 years, at some point people will get it and they'll stop doing it. But that's not going to fundamentally shift America. The woke stuff is bad. It's horrible. What they do, and it's incredible injustice. But it's easily fixable. It's easily reversible. And again, it's not, Americans are not going to go for this on a grand scale. But what Trump does is he does all the little things, tariffs and taking positions in other companies. Again, these are small things that I think are reversible. Okay, they're not that big deal. What Trump fundamentally does that the left has not done to this extent is he fundamentally undermines the very basis of the rule of law and American institutions. He actually went out there and said, I won an election, and tried to overturn it, knowing full well he'd lost, or at least everybody around him telling him that he lost. That is unique. That's never happened really in American history. And that suggests, okay, he doesn't really believe in elections. He's not willing to listen to the voice of the people when they during an election. He says things like, or he's just done it. He sues the New York Times over insulting him, over things that he sued many of the media. He is doing things, he's using the FCC in ways that are suggestive of shutting down certain programs and the media. He's using the levers of power in ways that are fundamentally undermining the constitutional nature of the country.
And that is strategic in your mind.
It's strategic by some people. It's just a power. It's just a grab by him. He just wants to be able to do whatever he wants to do. It's strategic by the people I think that are more thoughtful, that are running the show. But look, Tavis is a good example. He's just inventing powers that he doesn't have. He just makes stuff up. This is why this Supreme Court decision should come down any day, but they're delaying it. So I'm getting very worried about what it's going to be because there's so much delay. But saying, the power you've taken to use tariffs is unconstitutional is so important. And then his response to it. But he'll just take a power out of nowhere. Now, granted, Biden did the same thing. He forgave student loans, a power he didn't have. Trump does it just on a scale and with a confidence and with assertiveness that undermines and a disregard for the institutions that are the safeguard of this country. Yeah. He's a guy who you could think would disregard an election. Most Democrats are too, even though maybe they'd like to, they're too wimpy maybe to do that. But that's good. We don't want people who are willing to stand up and say, I won an election, and Vice President decertify this, even though it's unconstitutional. How many people would do that? Even Republicans. This is what makes Trump uniquely evil and uniquely bad, is his complete ignorance and disregard of all the basic foundational ideas and principles of America that are safeguards against authoritarianism. And once he gets rid of that, because I don't think he's a dictator. I don't think he has, again, a vision for what that looks like. But once he gets rid of all the safeguards, then watch the left and the right take advantage of that and really launch us. So he is the guy who will create the circumstances under which we go into dictatorship or we go into authoritarianism, if we do, in a way that I don't think the left could have done it and could have pulled off.
And one more thing, because I think I hear too many people saying, what do you say about, you're an idealist, you live in a dream, it's always about the ideal, you're just fighting windmills. And instead of looking at reality and say, that's what we have, those are the two parties, get on with the program.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. And that's why I get why some people vote for Trump. That is, I get that if you're a businessman and Biden's going to regulate the hell out of you and Trump is not, okay, so, I mean, you have to survive. Mm-hmm. So I get why people do that and why they vote that way.
They're still wrong.
I think they're wrong in a big picture, but in the context of their own life, it might be the right decision.
What is a financier, a company owner, an energy, owner of? What do you expect them to?
I'm not expecting them to do anything, right? I understand completely the complete insanity of the position that they're in, the fact that whatever they do, they're screwed. And that there's a trade-off here. And it's completely reasonable in my mind for some people in particular situations to come to the conclusion that Trump is it. what I'm not willing to excuse, right, particularly in private, put aside in public, is their willingness to defend him, right? So, okay, so you voted for him because you're in the energy industry, and I completely accept that your entire livelihood is dependent on. I mean, arguably, I lost my business because of Biden, right? Because of how Biden, regulated banks, my hedge fund. That business could not make money on a Biden regime, and a Trump regime, we probably would have done fine. Although I'm sure we would have done fine. We did fine in his first term. We probably would have done fine in his second term. So I get it, right? So, okay, vote for him. I get that you have to vote, your survival. But then don't defend him, right? Vote for him. He's there. And when he does all the bad things that he does, see them for what they are. See, people think that because they voted for him, now they have to excuse everything they do.
Yeah.
So, and again, I get why businessmen cannot be public about a lot of what they do. I get that. We're going to have to get a certain critical mass of them, I think, to be able to gang up, to be together, to be able to stand up to the authorities. But in private, at the very least in private, recognize all the faults. And but look, are we fighting windmills? There's an extent to which, in the short run, we're definitely fighting windmills. Do I think that a presidential candidate I actually will win an election in my lifetime? No, but I haven't thought that in 20 years. That is, I'm completely realistic about where we're going and my ability to change the world. I'm not fighting, first of all, if I can slow down the deterioration, which is part of what we're fighting, that's not a windmill. That can be done. I really do think that can be done. We can, and then secondly, can we grow the number of people who are good people? Can we grow the number of people who hold the right ideas? It's one mind at a time. We're not collectivists. We're not going to get a group of people suddenly, 100,000 people are going to switch to our views, but it's one mind at a time. It takes a long time. It probably takes generations. It will take decades, maybe more. But are we making a difference in people's lives? Me and the Institute? Yes, absolutely. I see that every single day, that we make a difference in individual people's lives. And are we slowing this train wreck down? That I don't know. I hope we're slowing it down. But that's all we can do at this point. We're not going to turn it around. We can slow down, and we can help people make their lives better as individuals.
Let's go back before we move on to maybe talking about the Institute and Objectivism. Let's go back to the book you're writing with Don Watkins about, I guess the title is Christianity versus the West. Why go after religion? Why do you think religion needs to be in the spotlight? Is it connected to what you just talked about, the right versus the left, and the risk of the right being, you think, more strategic than the risk of the left? Why go back to religion and attack it?
So I think there are two dimensions to this. One is political, and one is, I think, more in terms of individuals and in terms of people. Surprisingly, 250 years after the Enlightenment, religion is still strong. It might not be growing in terms of church participation and in terms of official, but the epistemology of religion, the ideology of religion is strong out there. It is, and in America more than any other place, although I think it's also rising in Europe. And it has a huge impact on politics. And according to Leonard Peikoff's dim hypothesis, which I agree with its conclusions, authoritarianism in America is probably going to come from a combination of nationalism and religion. So it is an enemy. It's an enemy, I think, that Ayn Rand certainly maybe in the 60s thought, oh, religion's dead. And I know a lot of people who think religion's dead and believe that. And sometimes the numbers suggest that again, the number of people self-identifying as religious is declining. But as a political cultural force, it is major, and I think it needs to be dealt with. And the other thing, and this is where if you asked me originally what I get angry with, well, what really, I get angry when people position themselves as being, for example, pro-capitalism when they're not, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that really angers me about religion is that it positions itself as being pro-America, pro-freedom, and pro-capitalism.
And pro-Enlightenment. And it's some in a way, I've seen you in front of students who were sure that Enlightenment is a Christianity phenomenon.
Yes. So Enlightenment couldn't have happened if not for Christianity. And the founding of America. America is a Christian country. And that pisses me off, right? That because again, it's the same phenomena of they're taking credit for something they don't deserve. And by doing so, if people start associating Christianity with capitalism, Christianity with America, Christianity with freedom, then all those terms start meaning nothing, right? Because Christianity is the opposite of all of them.
Right.
So at the political level, that's kind of one level where I think it really needs to be combated, and we need to stake out a position of America and freedom and capitalism that is distinct and separate and the opposite of Christianity.
Or the Judeo-Christian
Yeah, I mean,
of America. And
we could talk about Judeo-Christian if there is such a thing, but certainly the Christian, because Judaism, with all due respect to Judaism, has no impact on the world.
You got a Dennis Prager kind of blending.
Yeah, but again, Dennis Prager's, it's all a con game, right? There's no Jews qua ideology has no impact on the world. It's Christianity. Christianity is at the core of all of it, and whether Christianity really is kind of an extension of Judaism or not, I'll leave that to theologians to figure out. But the second aspect of it is, so that's one, it's the political, cultural phenomena and fighting for the right ideas. The second is personal. That is, I see people, and we used the example, I think, at the opening of our book of Ayan Hirsi Ali. You see people who are basically really good people who've seen a lot, done a lot, and have been representative of Enlightenment ideas and even being atheists and everything. And you see them turning to Christianity, partially because of these big ideas, because it's the only way to fight the left. But why is it the only way to fight the left in their view? Because they believe it's the only way to find meaning in life and to offer meaning to people. That is, they have to go to mysticism in order to find purpose and meaning.
Isn't that more about the fact that you have to ground morality somewhere, kind of what we call the is-odd gap? It's like, where do I get my virtues from?
Yes, and since they reject the idea, and maybe they've actually lived it, that they can't find morality in reason in secular life.
And for sure not in the left.
Yeah, the left has nothing, but Ayan Hirsi Ali was, for example, never on the left. Yeah. But she was even exposed. She was exposed to Iran, but she's lived a life. But at the end of the day, she says she feels empty, and particularly when she has children.
Yeah.
What values do I educate my children around? Where do these values come from? I can't find them. I can't articulate them. I can't figure them out. And and so she can't find them. I once had a conversation with Ayan Hirsi Ali, and she said, she knew I was from the Ayn Rand Institute, and she knew Ayn Rand. She basically said, "Look, I'm a Humean."
A Humean.
She's a skeptic.
Yeah.
Right. So her rejection of religion led her to skepticism.
Yeah.
Skepticism leads you to have no moral values. It's a dead end. It really is a dead end. Hume is a dead end when it comes to moral values, and that's the false dichotomy they have. So, in a choice between having some values that come from who knows where, or having no values because you're a skeptic, you default on. So objectivism is the solution to this problem. We have values objectively, verifiable in reality, but then if the ultimate value is your own life, then you're selfish, and they can't handle that. Altruism is so deeply ingrained in our culture. It's so deeply ingrained, even in the best people in our culture. They can't handle the thought. And that's it's not the particular values that they reject. It's that they should be the beneficiary is what they reject. And so the book is trying to do two things on a cultural level, trying to say, no, Christianity is not pro-freedom, not pro-America, not pro any of these things. And the shape of Western civilization is not a product, the good stuff in Western civilization is not a product of Christianity. And it's also say to you individuals who are searching for meaning, you're not going to find it in mysticism. Skepticism is wrong. There is an alternative. Read Ayn Rand. So, and take it seriously, because a lot of people read Ayn Rand, but they don't take it seriously as a philosopher. And again, I think they reject selfishness way too early, way too quickly, because their altruism kicks in, and they just can't even imagine what a self-interested morality, that such a thing is even possible.
I had the privilege of spending time with you, asking you questions at the edge of my knowledge, and I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask those questions on the positives, on the ideals. Okay, what is the ideal immigration policy? I mean, if it was up to you, you're president, you have a time horizon to fix everything. What does immigration look like in an objectivist society?
Well, I think in an objectivist society, it's in a sense a non-issue. I mean, the reality is even the Constitution doesn't really mention immigration because the assumption was people would come, and who cares? At the height of immigration in the 19th century in the United States, you basically came to Ellis Island.
Give us your poor, give us your sick. That was the
and if you didn't have an infectious disease, and there was no reason for them, and they, in those days, infectious disease were an issue, and particularly tuberculosis, and if you didn't, it wasn't obvious that you posed some real threat to the population.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. And I think that's, at the end of the day, an ideal immigration policy. Now, how exactly is that implemented? What kind of screening, if any, is enforced? That could be.
What about ideological screening?
So you can't do ideological screening. First of all, immigrants, qua immigrants, don't have that much impact on the ideology of the country. What are they going
mass, populations from, I don't know, where they come from, Russia or from North Korea breaks down.
That's exactly what happened during the 19th century. And look, at the end of the day, if our ideology is strong, if we know what we stand for, then what threat are these barbarians, right?
This is everything about, their
it's not democracy.
Borders to bias the elections and put aside the welfare state.
Okay, so if we're talking about the world today,
yeah,
right? Immigrants, illegal immigrants don't vote. So how are they biasing the election? And there hasn't been amnesty for illegal immigrants since the 1980s, since Ronald Reagan. So since the 1980s, I don't know, 20, 30 million illegal immigrants have come into the United States. Some of them have gone back. There are 20 million illegal immigrants right now in the U.S. probably. They don't vote. So what impact are they going to have? Now, they might have an impact today on the culture in a negative way. Absolutely. Because our culture is so weak. We don't have the confidence in our culture. Now imagine an American culture that knows what it stands for, knows why it's good,
so you won't
demands that others assimilate. It demands, you want to come here? Great. We'll accept you. You have to work. So put aside the welfare state's gone because we're in an objectivist world. So they work. The best way to assimilate people is through work. Work, you have to learn the language. Work, you get the sense of merit. Yeah, you get paid based on, so you might come from a socialist place, but here, you have to, you actually have to be successful, otherwise you don't get compensated. You don't want to work? Fine, starve, right? So you immediately assimilate into basic fundamental ideas of what America demands of you. And if the culture you engage with has an educational system and has that is confident in itself, everybody will adapt to you. I mean, the idea that 10 million socialists will come to America and suddenly un-Americans will go, oh, socialism, we didn't know, this is amazing. While it might be true today because we're so weak, certainly that is not true in kind of an objectivist society of the future. So there's no ideological screening except under the one circumstances where you're at war. So when you're at war, you don't let the enemy send their people in. Mm-hmm. So in World War II, you don't let Nazis come to the United States, and you ban Nazis. If we're today at war with Islamic totalitarianism or radical Islam or Islamism, whatever we want to call it, then you don't let Islamists in. So that's the one screen that you put on it. But the reality is, if you say the ideal, right? In the ideal world, we're not at war with anybody, partially because it's so easy to defeat our enemies. The wars don't last very long. I mean, how long would a war between the United States and the Islamists last? I mean, 5 days, 6 days? It would be a 6-day war. I mean, it's
Israel
not.
Can take them out in a.
It's ridiculous. I mean, all this obsession about how difficult it is to defeat them is pathetic, and they don't learn from experience. They don't learn from history. They don't learn from actual wars that are being fought. So So yes, so Islamism will be at war with Islamism for a month, and then immigration restrictions disappear, right? Because you want.
I want to go back to the point. You're saying there's no institutional way to defend against new cultures, new ideas.
Well, there shouldn't be one, right? There shouldn't be one because, men are free, right? And if I want to become a socialist and be influenced by socialists, I should be free to do so. So the point here is individual rights. You have no right to dictate who I associate with. If I want
to open a factory with 10,000 Chinese,
who has the right to tell you otherwise? Right? If I always say, if I want to take my pickup truck and go down to Mexico and load it up with some Mexicans and bring them over to work in my factory, who has the right to tell me no? I mean, it's absolutely within my rights to do that. I haven't violated anybody else's rights by doing so. That is, nobody's rights are hurt. That is, if you don't want to interact with these Mexicans, don't.
What's the meaning of a border? I mean, if you can go load up and bring immigrants and open it, Apple opens a factory and brings, I don't know, 500,000 Chinese to, manufacture iPhones in America.
It means that when the Chinese live in the United States, they're under U.S. law. Mm-hmm. And when you go to China, you're under Chinese law. That's all the border means. It doesn't mean anything else like that. It means jurisdiction. It means the law that applies in these borders is American law, and the law in those borders is Mexican law.
And you said something about being a citizen versus being a resident.
Yeah.
Let's play this scenario where Apple brings 500,000 Chinese to build iPhones.
Again, they're not voting. Yeah. They're not citizens.
Can they say, "Oh, I like this place. I want to be a citizen"?
And over time, maybe. So here again, I think there's a lot of options. I mean, I have a view that is not an objectivist view, in a sense that it's not a view that has been sanctioned by Ayn Rand. And I think a lot of intellectuals disagree with me, but that's fine. My view is nobody should be a citizen unless they pass a citizenship test. There should be a test, not ideological, but a fundamental test about your knowledge of the institutions and their purpose. You shouldn't vote in an election like half of Americans, maybe 3/4 of Americans do today, who don't even know what system of government we have, don't know the Constitution, don't know the Declaration, don't know division of powers and checks and balances, what those concepts mean. So there would have to be a civics test that basically you had a really good, not a superficial, not like this citizen test we have today, which is a little book. They tell you to memorize all the questions and you memorize all the answers. But an actual test that actually tests whether you understand the system of government into which you are voting. And so it's not about your opinion of it, it's just you understand it. And if you understand it, you become a citizen. If you don't understand it, you don't become a citizen. And that should apply to American-born, people who are born in America as well.
So you won't give immediate...
I don't give citizenship to anybody unless they pass the test.
Okay.
And which is fine, because being a citizen is not a big deal, right? All rights, and this is another thing that I think people don't understand, rights are individual rights, not citizenship rights. Every individual on planet Earth has the right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, it says in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal and endowed with these inalienable rights. So everybody on the planet has these rights. And the question is, are they being violated or aren't they? Most places they're being violated. In America, they're violated, but not as much, right? So if somebody comes here and lives here and works here, they have all the rights except they can't vote. And there are a few other things, right? Maybe their property overseas is not protected by America, and maybe America doesn't go to war to free them from being imprisoned somewhere else. So, I mean, there's certain things America doesn't do for you if you're not a citizen. But the main thing is voting. Voting's not that important. So, particularly in a free society. I mean, the less free we are, the more important the vote is, right? It's funny, but in the 19th century, did it matter that much who you voted for? No. Does it matter today? Yes, because of the kind of choices that we have. So, but even today, it doesn't matter that much because we get screwed either way. So, being a citizen and therefore having an impact on the vote should be something you earn. Maybe time lived in the country and pass a test. And everybody should have to have that, maybe it's 18 years because that's what it would apply to somebody born in the country. You live in America 18 years, you do a test, you're in. And that includes born, and at your 18th birthday, you can take the test. But otherwise, but look, that is a idealized position. The reality of the world we live in, you need a passport. A lot of Americans wouldn't have passports. How could they travel? They couldn't travel. So, there'd have to be some accommodation for all that. Maybe they get a passport, but they don't get voting rights, or maybe there's another kind of split. But that's just me. That's not objectivism. What objectivism says is, Ayn Rand really didn't say much about immigration other than she was for it. Obviously, she was an immigrant. Is that you don't vote when you come. You have to become a citizen. Becoming a citizen is a process. It could take 20 years. It could be that you say first-generation immigrants could never vote. I'm fine with that. I don't care. So it doesn't matter. The fact is that 99.9% of immigrants who come to America don't come to vote. They come to live in America. They come to work in America. They come to improve their lives, and voting is not that important. So let them in. Don't let them vote. I mean, and my solution. Look, we need also solutions to get to the ideal. My solution today is anybody who can get a job in the United States should be allowed in. So, there was a proposal once in Congress, didn't live for very long, but basically allow employment agencies all over the world to grant work visas to people to come in the United States. They could access the FBI, to get background checks, and then they would stamp your passport, an employment agency, and they would be in charge of making sure that you could, and make them 5-year renewable. And after you hit 20 years, it becomes a permanent thing, and you don't become a citizen. There are lots of things like that you can do to eliminate the issue of welfare because they come to work, and solve the problem. And all these people who claim they only hate illegal immigrants, but they're fine with legal immigration, 90% of them are lying to themselves, I think, often, because when you actually push them, they don't want legal immigrants, because legal immigrants are competing for their jobs, and they don't want competition for their jobs. And legal immigrants, they say, lower wages and destroy the culture and all. So what they're really after is not illegal immigrants. What they're really after is the destruction of all immigration. So when I propose, okay, let as many people as can come who will find a job, and they'll be legal and they'll work. Still against it.
Let's move to another thing that I found your answers to be interesting, which is Rand talked about how in an objectivist society would fund a government. What is your take on funding the government? How would that actually work? She gave some ideas, but what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think two of her ideas are probably what will dominate. Again, somebody might come up with better ideas, but the first thing, it has to be understood that it can't be coercive. So in one form or another, it has to be voluntary. So one idea she came up with that I think makes sense is that if you have a contract with somebody and you want that contract to be arbitrated by the state, or in a sense, with the coercive power of the state, you pay a fee for all those contracts, and that funds, let's say, the judicial system. I think it funds more than that. Probably funds the police as well. And then beyond that, the funding is voluntary. That is, at the end of every month, we write a check to the government, or at the end of every year, or whatever, we write a check to the government. And that probably funds the military and maybe some of the policing. And my view is people would be happy to do that. Now, let's think about what kind of government we're talking about. We're talking about a government that spends 5% of what it spends today, right? So if you think about the government in the 19th century, the U.S. government spent 3.5% of GDP. Right? Today it spends 22% at the federal level, but overall we probably spend close to 40, maybe a little over 40% if you count all the different levels of government. All of that is gone. Basically, you're funding police, military, and judiciary. And you're funding it at the state level and federal level. Maybe it's 5% of GDP. Maybe it's a little more if we want a big military. But that's a fraction of what we're funding today. So if today I'm paying $50,000 a year in taxes, suddenly I'm being asked to pay $5,000. Mm-hmm. How many people would, given that they're now keeping 45, how many people would not want to pay $5,000 to know that they're going to have a police and a military and a judiciary that's robust and there to help and protect them. So I think people would be happy to write those checks and in support of the government. And and if they're free riders, people who don't want to write the checks and free ride off of everybody else, then make it public who the free riders are and let people ostracize them, let social pressure work on them. So I think it's easy, and the amounts of money are relatively small when you think about the size of the American population and you think about the amount of money you actually need to do what government needs to do.
Mm-hmm. I want to move to a little bit about objectivism. I have an interesting hypothesis about how to identify someone who is more likely to accept, or think about or rethink their beliefs in a way like I did when I read Atlas Shrugged. And that is, how do they live with contradictions? I was very, very sensitive all my life about conscious contradictions that I've held, and I had to find a solution. What do you think is unique about people like you and me and many others of friends, where you say, for some reason, we get it. We are willing to drop a lot of beliefs, premises that we were taught, held for many, many years, and suddenly you see something that integrates way better, explains the reality so much better, and we're willing to just, I know it's not just to drop, it takes a lot of psychological work, but I was willing to do that work, and you were willing to do that when you were 16.
Yeah.
Good for you. But what is unique about our psychology in any way that you think is different than other people?
I don't really know, and I don't think any of us really knows, because it's something about some of the deepest choices that we make about facing reality and accepting and acknowledging reality. I think it has to do with intellectual honesty, and this is the contradictions that you mentioned, not accepting contradictions, not accepting something that is just not right and doesn't make sense. And when encountering something that seems like the truth, pursuing it, going and digging deeper and figuring it out because it is the truth. So caring about the truth, I think at the end of the day, is what it's about. But why? I mean, you can only ask so many why questions in consciousness, because at some point it's because that's the choice that you made. And the fundamental choice that people make is whether to think or not to think, and whether to apply that thought to every aspect of their life or not. And everything they encounter or not. So it's that commitment to truth, to honesty, to reality, I think that's much harder the older you get. So kudos to you doing it when you did it. I don't think many people can reach age 40 and do it. I think that's very, very rare. When you're young, you have less of a commitment to whatever ideas you hold, right? You're still playing around. At 16, how committed could I be to? Maybe I'd been thinking about ideas for 2, 3, 4 years max, right? Now there are ideas around you and so on, but it's much different than pursuing ideas for 20 years and then discovering they're all wrong. That is a much bigger shift and a much bigger change, and requires a lot more courage.
So when you meet young people, and you meet a lot of young people when you travel, how can you see that spark? How can you see in the questions, in the way they think? What are you looking for? They say that person has potential.
I mean, I think the people who are non-defensive, the people who are truly trying to understand, that are asking questions, but what about that? Oh. And they're not immediately coming back about that can't work.
Take a
that's
minute
impossible.
to think about it.
They're going to think about it, and then they're asking the next question in pursuit of truth, not in pursuit of defending their old position. You find so many people who are just defending their old position, and you find these young, really smart kids who want to poke holes.
Yeah.
That is not healthy. It's the really smart kids who's trying to understand what it is that you're saying and what its true implications are. Those are the kids that I think you have hope. The people who are poking holes, they're too busy defending, and they want to show how smart they are, right? But it's the real inquisitive mind that it's where you're going. But even then, right, of every 10 really inquisitive minds, we only land up with one if we're lucky.
Let's talk about ARI for a little bit. How much did you like your job at ARI? I mean, you were CEO for
That's not a nice question.
Why? I think it's a great question. I mean, you did that for 17 years. Was it fun? Was it hard? How was it for you?
It was mostly fun. It wasn't always fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved it. Overall, I loved it. I loved the challenge of it. I love being around really smart people committed to the same values that I am. I love, going out there and doing what I still do, which is speaking in those days on behalf of the Institute. And I loved even the fundraising. I didn't love the actual fundraising, but the
meeting,
yeah. The smartest, most amazing people, even people who never gave us money, but just the kind of people I never thought.
Caliber of people.
The kind of caliber of people that I got to meet and sit down. I loved that. That was a lot of fun. I mean, there are aspects of a job, every job that you like more and that you like less, but the core activity was great.
What is your current evaluation of where we are as a movement, maybe even as an institute? I mean, how much, we talk about seeing not just the gap, but also the gain and looking back and where we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Or is to be expected? Is it?
There's a sense of which, exposed, you could look back and say it's to be expected.
Yeah.
But there were periods where I was much more hopeful in terms of the influence and growth and potential of the movement. I think there were key moments in which we maybe could have done more, or people who could have done more. But generally, I'm happy and satisfied. I think we're moving in the right direction. I'd like more, a lot more. I think that more is needed. I worry about the speed at which the culture is deteriorating versus the speed at which we are growing. As you know, I think cultures are changed by intellectuals. There's just no shortcut to that, and we need hundreds, not dozens, but hundreds. If you think about how the left took over the institutions, hundreds of intellectuals, and that is true of pretty much every movement out there. The Enlightenment it's not an organized movement, but it's a movement of, they call themselves the Republic of Letters. It's fascinating, the internet of the time. There were these thousands of intellectuals, in the low thousands, but thousands of intellectuals, all over the world, really, including America. Franklin, Jefferson, they were part of this, and they were all exchanging letters, and they would CC, in a sense that a letter would go to a number of people, and they would comment each other's work, and they would argue and debate, but it was all by letter. And in those days, letters took weeks, months to get to people.
The intellectual work of it at the time.
Yeah, so that's the work that needs to be done. It's write. I mean, it's speak. That's what needs to be done. That's what changes ultimately the culture, and I think that's what gets people excited about Ayn Rand. I just had a guy who's been listening to my show since 2018.
Yeah.
Right, and he's probably older. He's not a young kid. 2018. He just told me he started reading Atlas Shrugged. It's like, what?
Hope. There's hope.
7 years it took you to get to Atlas Shrugged. But so I'd like to see hundreds of intellectuals out there, hundreds of people with podcasts and Substacks and stuff going on. We have a vision for a university. I think that ultimately that is a way to produce those intellectuals. I think it's always going to be kind of a niche university, and that's going to be its goal, is to produce those people who are influential. And it doesn't have to be full-time intellectuals. It also can be an intellectual businessman, right? Somebody who's going to be very successful in business. But John Allison, another hero of mine, if you will, who was a businessman, a CEO of a bank, and who spoke about Ayn Rand nonstop and did these huge impact on his people. And he didn't have an impact maybe in terms of converting people to the philosophy, but he had an impact on making people's lives better because they were exposed to these ideas. So we need a lot more intellectual businessmen. I think that's what a university can produce, that in intellectuals. But we need scale, and the only way to get scale is you just have to grind it, right? You just have to, every cohort has to be bigger than the previous cohort, and ultimately it grows exponentially. But in the flat period, it seems frustrating, before you get to that pivot point.
So I want to go back to kind of maybe end on a personal again. So what is your role in all of this? What fuels you, and what is success for you? I mean, I don't know, in a 5-year time frame, what will be something where you say, I've succeeded?
God, 5 years. You know, right now I'm pretty focused on my show and growing it and increasing its influence and its impact. And that is not always measured by numbers, but it's a lot of it's measured by who listens and who is influenced by it. You know, I'm encouraged by the fact that people out there know of my work and know what I'm doing and know of the ideas. I think partially because of me, they know of these ideas. You know, it's people sometimes that surprise me. I mean, the first time we ever contacted Douglas Murray, years and years ago, his response was, "Yeah, I know Yaron. Yeah, I'd love to do a thing with Yaron. I admire his
Came
work."
to our European conference.
Well, we actually did something in London even before that.
Yeah, before that, and then
But he knew me from even before. I didn't know he knew me. How did he know me? What contact did we have? So getting out there in the intellectual circles that make a difference ultimately, I think is important to me. I'd love to be a recognized public intellectual. I don't know if that will actually happen because I think there's a lot of the system out there is poised against me. But at least a public intellectual a sense of a public intellectual that has an impact and people respect and people are listening to, or at least younger intellectuals are listening to, certainly within the Objectivist movement, but even outside of the Objectivist movement.
yeah. If you could go back to your 20-year-old self, and with everything you know now, what advice would you give yourself that you think would help you go through your 20s, 30s, 40s even better? Is there something you've learned about life?
Don't study engineering. I clearly pursued a path that was not my path for a long time. I didn't really become kind of an objectivist intellectual until I was 40, late 30s. I studied a lot of things that only partially had any relevance to what I ultimately landed up speaking and writing and about. I don't know what my life would be like if I'd gone study history, which is what I really am passionate about. I don't know what life would have been like if I'd done that. Maybe this was the right path, right? Maybe I needed to do the engineering and the finance, and maybe the finance gives me a perspective on things that people who just do the humanities don't have, like into how the real world works and how business works. But yeah, probably you're capable of more than you know, I guess, because I would have never imagined. I mean, I would have never imagined it really until I got offered the job that I would be CEO of the Ayn Rand Institute. To me, Ayn Rand was, and Leonard Peikoff, that I would be, close to Leonard Peikoff. That seemed bizarre. That would have seemed bizarre to me if you told me when I was 20. So yeah,
follow your interests.
Follow those interests. Don't really go after it. And I did while also studying all these other things. It's hard to rewind. My life was not planned out. I'm not a Howard Roark who knew at a very young age exactly what he wanted to do and how to do it. I've done lots of different things. I've had many, many careers, and I've enjoyed all of them. I've never had a period where I said, no, I hate what I'm doing. I've always enjoyed it, and it's always gotten better. Like the next one has always been better, and and that's true even today. I mean, what I do now is, for me, better than what I did running the institute. 17 years is enough. I mean, by any measure. But when I was 20, I didn't know what I wanted. I knew I was passionate about objectivism, but I didn't think of it as a career. I didn't think of it as, I mean, that's, can end on this positive note because I think it really is. I mean, that's what the Institute now is making possible, right? It's making possible young people thinking, I could be like Anka. I could have a career in this. I could have a career in this. So when I was 20, I didn't know anything. Right? I'd read the books, I'd studied the ideas, but I didn't know objectivists. I didn't know and there was no idea that there was a career even possible. What would you do in that career? What were the actions of career?
Would
And
pay
the
you money.
and the institute now has created a path both to study,
Yeah.
to learn the skills, and to learn the content, and it's created a path for an actual career. I can now be an intellectual, at least, and I can be trained. I can go do my own thing. I can do all these things, and that is unbelievably exciting. If you're 18, if you're 18 right now, and you're reading Ayn Rand for the first time, and you're passionate about these ideas and about talking about these ideas, now you can imagine yourself doing this for the rest of your life. That's pretty cool.
Last question, going back to what you love. I know you love art.
Yeah.
You love a good movie.
Yep.
You love so many, you love food.
Yep.
What's the thing that you're excited about right now? Is there something recent that really moved you? Or are you going back to your old classics?
I mean, there's always new stuff to discover. There's always, we just discovered a new sculptor who I'm excited about, thinking about next time I'm in Spain, maybe going to visit his studio, which would be fun.
So that's what moves you, sculpture, art? I mean,
Art still moves me. I still love traveling around the world and going.
mainly
to
sculpture,
see-
it seems. No?
No, sculpture, paintings. I mean,
Paintings
my
as
wife
well.
and I are now, right now, we're watching a show on Renaissance art, but he's got it's by somebody who has kind of a different perspective, right, on Renaissance art and on the way Renaissance art is always been taught and presented. And I don't agree with everything, but he's presenting a perspective that's interesting, even if I disagree with it. And then he's exposing me to some of the Renaissance art I wasn't familiar with, and explaining it in a new way. So that's and most of it's painting, and that's kind of exciting and fun. But art more broadly, particularly sculpture and painting, I don't seem to have the patience or the time for literature like I wish I did. When I do, I love it. But I still like watching movies. But it's so hard to find anything really good that really moves you. I like good television, again, but it's hard to find something really good. But so those are more entertainment than
Can
they
you
are.
verbalize the emotion you get from discovering some new art, where you walk into a museum and you see something beautiful for the first time? What
I
is
don't know
that?
how to, it really moves you. It depends, of course, on the piece itself and what particular emotions it's evoking, but also just the knowledge that somebody could create something like this. I mean, so I know what they're capable of and what they're capable of producing. But yes, the nice thing about art is, in spite of the fact that there's very little great art being produced today, there's so much in history, and there's so much new knowledge. But the other thing I love is, I read a lot of nonfiction, and I love history, and I love reading history. I love reading about the Enlightenment. I love reading about kind of how history evolved, how the causal relationships, how things
Specifically
happen.
the ideas or the events or both?
The ideas, the events, the characters, the people. I mean, these fascinating people in the middle of it, and just the connections. And every time you read something, you make more connections. You see
Another
more
piece in the
links.
puzzle.
Yeah, life is fascinating, and the more you engage with it, the more you embrace it, the more you study it, the more fun it is.
Well, I hope you don't underestimate how much impact you have on people's life, including mine.
Appreciate that. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
The interview.